There's a really special quiet time between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Most of the world is sleeping soundly, not knowing anything. But the sky seems to speak to the few people who wake up then. This isn't just about getting up early. It's about really waking up to yourself. It's about finding that peaceful moment before all the rush and chaos begin. In this hour, your soul finally gets a chance to breathe, free from the world's constant noise. You see, healing doesn't happen with loud shouts. Growing doesn't come with big announcements. And clarity, that clear feeling, doesn't just bang on your door. It comes in quiet moments, when you let go and just be. It's when you sit alone in the dark and listen to your heart tell you truths you've been too busy to hear all day. That's what this time is for. Some say God feels closest between 3 and 5 in the morning. Not because God moves closer, but because we finally step away from our daily worries, our ego, and trying to impress others. We meet ourselves without our usual masks. Waking up early has become a popular idea for being productive, talked about as a secret to success. But between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., it's not about checking things off your to-do list or getting a head start on emails. This hour isn't about showing off. It's not a badge for how hard you work. It's about truly being present. It's the moment you choose to focus on yourself before the world starts demanding pieces of you. This kind of early rising isn't for working harder, it's for feeling more stable and connected. So, it's not about jumping into action, but about getting in touch with your true intentions before your energy gets pulled in 100 different directions. In these hours before dawn, the world isn't asking for anything. No chores, no meetings, no endless scrolling telling you who to be. It's just you, your breath, and the calm, steady beat of the morning. And in that calm, you can finally feel the rhythm of your own life again. You wake up not to get ahead, but to return to what you value, your clear thoughts, your peace. This deep sense of being present is something you can't buy, fake, or rush. You have to find it in the quiet. You have to be willing to wake up when it's not easy. You have to want to know your own truth more than you want your comfort. Being present is different from just being aware. You can be aware all day long, aware of your tasks, your deadlines, your goals, and still feel empty inside. But presence, real presence, is sacred. It's being completely in the moment with yourself. No distractions, no hiding. It's showing up not as the person the world expects, but as the real you that existed before anyone told you who to be. And that real you is quieter, more gentle, and usually buried under tons of noise. You won't find this real you at noon in a crowded room. You find it in the dark, when the world is still and your soul begins to stir. This kind of early rising teaches you to slow down before the day makes you speed up. It creates space for you to decide how you want to be in the world, instead of just reacting to everything. Instead of waking up and being pulled into other people's busy lives, you ground yourself in your own. You start to lead your day instead of letting your day lead you. And that leadership isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes it's as quiet as taking a deep breath. Sometimes it's as simple as not checking your phone. Sometimes it's choosing a peaceful thought over a stressful one. That's presence. That's power. You begin to realize that waking up early isn't about doing more things. It's about being more. Being more connected to your own energy. Being more mindful of how you talk to yourself. Being more careful about what you bring into your day. Being busy without being present is just putting on a show. And performing without a real reason is empty. But when you start your day with real intention, everything else falls into place. You don't have to chase meaning. It quietly and patiently follows you because you've made space for it. There's something ancient about waking up before the sun. It connects you to something bigger than computer algorithms and to-do lists. It connects you to the sky, to the natural rhythm of the earth, to the silence of your ancestors who once prayed and thought under the same stars. You feel like part of a much longer story. Not because you're doing more, but because you're remembering more, remembering who you are, why you're here, and what truly matters before the daily noise tries to make you forget. And when you carry that peaceful presence into your day, you move differently, you speak differently, you listen differently, because you're no longer just existing. You're truly living from the inside out. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the world is covered in a deep quiet. Streets are empty. Phones are silent. No one is calling. No one is posting online. No one is watching. There's a calm that spreads across the sky like a soft whisper that only the brave can hear. And in that special calm, something changes. All the distractions disappear, and you're left alone, not lonely, but alone with your thoughts, your breath, and your truth. That outside silence doesn't just stay outside. It starts to fill you up. You begin to hear things you couldn't hear during the day's noise. Thoughts you've hidden, feelings you've ignored, dreams you've pushed aside, they all start to rise up like smoke, gentle but impossible to ignore. This time of morning is different. It's not just early. It's pure, untouched, sacred. There's no pressure, no need to perform, no demand to be anything other than who you are. The masks we wear all day, strong, busy, happy, productive, they simply fall off. And what's left is raw, honest truth. You see yourself for who you really are, not who the world tells you to be. There's no applause, no audience, just your soul finally being heard. And that's why it's powerful. The outside quiet creates space for your inner truth to speak. Most people are scared of silence. They fill it with music, with talking, with scrolling on their phones. But in those early hours, there's nowhere to hide. You either face yourself or you stay asleep, both literally and figuratively. And when you choose to wake up in that silence, you're not just waking from sleep. You're waking up from living on autopilot. You start noticing the thoughts that sneak in without permission. You realize which emotions you've been pushing down and which dreams you've been putting off. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. But it's real. And being real is where healing begins. There's also a strange strength in being awake when the rest of the world isn't. Not because it makes you better than others, but because it makes you open to your own spirit. Being open like this opens doors. Ideas become clearer. Decisions feel less cloudy. Your heart, instead of racing to keep up with life, finally gets a chance to speak. And if you listen closely, you'll hear what it's been trying to say all along, that you're tired, that you're hopeful, that you're scared, that you're brave, that you're still standing. It all comes up in the silence, asking to be noticed. There's no noise to block out your inner wisdom at this hour. No traffic, no emails, no deadlines stressing you out. Just breath, just life, just you. You begin to remember things you'd forgotten in the rush. You remember what matters, who matters. You remember your younger self, the one who used to dream without fear. You see the space between who you are and who you're meant to be, not as a failure, but as an invitation to close that gap, one quiet morning at a time. In this silence, even your fears start to look different. They're not monsters anymore. They're messages telling you what needs healing, what needs to be let go, what needs your courage. The world during the day tells you to move faster, but this silence tells you to slow down, to feel, to just be. It's in this space that clarity finds you. Not with a sudden bang, but with a soft knock on your soul's door. And when you open it, you don't find answers. You find yourself. Prayer at this hour isn't about rules or habits. It's not the kind of prayer you do just because you always have. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., prayer becomes something completely different. It becomes an honest, raw conversation. It's not smooth or practiced. It's not something you get ready for with fancy words or formal gestures. It's messy. It's real. It's you showing up just as you are, tired, broken, hopeful, confused, grateful, scared, all of it with no filters. In the quiet of the early morning, you're not performing for anyone. No one is listening except the one who already knows what's in your heart. That's the kind of honesty only the night can bring out of you. There's something about how the darkness holds space for being vulnerable. When the world is asleep and your defenses are down, your layers peel back on their own. You don't even have to try. You just breathe, and suddenly you're saying things you didn't know you needed to say. Your heart starts speaking before your mind can stop it. It whispers pains you've been quietly carrying. It cries out for strength, for comfort, for understanding. And instead of feeling embarrassed or weak, you feel seen, not by people, but by a higher power. In that moment, you realize that prayer isn't about saying the right words. It's about saying the true ones. You don't have to kneel perfectly. You don't have to say perfect verses. Sometimes prayer is just sitting still and breathing. Sometimes it's crying without a single word. Sometimes it's asking why over and over until you have nothing left but silence. And that silence, it becomes part of the prayer too. It says what words can't. It's the soul's language when it has run out of words. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that silence is full. It holds more feeling than 1,000 speeches. And in that quiet, you start to understand that prayer is more than asking for things. It's a relationship, a lifeline, a place you return to, not to be fixed, but to be held. People often think prayer is about changing your problems. But in these special hours, you learn it's really about changing how you see things. You put your worries down, not so they magically disappear, but so they don't crush you. You give up control, not because you're quitting, but because you trust there's a strength greater than yours. And by doing that, you're no longer alone with your struggle. You're no longer carrying your pain in silence. You're handing it over, little by little, to something bigger, kinder, and endlessly more patient. A peace gently wraps around you when you pray at this time. Not always right away, not always with a big show, but it comes, sometimes as an answer, sometimes as a release, sometimes just as a breath, the kind that comes a little easier than before. It doesn't matter how you pray. It doesn't matter if your voice shakes or your words fall apart. What matters is that you show up, that you let your guard down, that you speak or cry or just sit there in silence with open hands and an even more open heart. The world spends so much time telling you to be strong, to keep moving, to pretend you're fine. But in these early hours, prayer tells you the opposite. It tells you it's okay to be tired. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not have it all figured out. You're not expected to be perfect here. You're just expected to be present, to come as you are. And when you do, something shifts. Not always on the outside, but definitely within. Because prayer at this hour doesn't change who God is. It changes who you remember you are. Writing in the early morning hours isn't just a habit. It's a special way to let things out. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when the world is quiet and the air feels important, your thoughts come out honest and raw. You don't write to impress others. You don't write to be understood. You write because there's something inside you that can't stay silent anymore. And in that silence, your pen becomes a witness. The paper becomes a place where you can confess. There's no judgment here. No need to make your reality sound better or dress up your feelings. This kind of writing is raw. It's often messy. It doesn't care about perfect grammar or fancy words. It just wants to exist. When the sun hasn't risen yet, your defenses are still asleep. Your mind hasn't put on its daily mask. You're not thinking about who's watching, who's reading, who's liking. You're just pouring out memories you thought you'd forgotten. Thoughts you didn't know were hidden. Regrets you've pushed away by being busy. All of it starts to come to the surface, like dust finally catching the light. Writing at this hour doesn't always make perfect sense. Sometimes it rambles. Sometimes it goes around the same idea again and again. But even in that repeating, there's new understanding. You start to see patterns. You notice what keeps bothering you, what keeps calling you, what you keep denying. There's something very personal about putting your pain, your joy, your confusion into words when everyone else is asleep. It's like sending a letter to yourself across time, a record of where you are, what you're feeling, and what you're fighting for. Some mornings, the words come out slowly, like drops from a tired faucet. Other times, they rush out like a storm that's been held back too long. But no matter how fast or slow, every word is a release, a weight off your chest, a sigh on paper. And even if no one else reads it, you read it. And by doing so, you learn to understand yourself a little more. Writing at this hour gives you space to deal with what the busy day doesn't give you time to feel. The things you ignored, the emotions you kept down, the questions you didn't have time to ask. They all come back when the noise stops. You write not to escape them, but to face them. And strangely, the more you write, the less power they have over you. It's not therapy in the usual way, but it is healing, because there is power in giving things names, in turning vague feelings into specific words, in bringing shadows into the light where they can't scare you as much. It's not always deep. Sometimes it's silly. Sometimes it's dreams, ideas, random thoughts about life, or even jokes that don't make sense later. And that's fine. The point is not to create something perfect. The point is to empty yourself, to unload what your soul has been carrying, so you don't drag it into a new day. And sometimes, tucked between the mess and scribbles, you find clarity. You write a sentence and it hits you like lightning. That's what you've been feeling. That's what you needed to hear. And the best part, it came from you. No one teaches you how to do this. You just start. You grab a pen or open a document and you let go. You write like nobody's reading, because they aren't. You write like your life depends on it, because some mornings it does. This isn't journaling for being productive or posting for attention. This is soul work. This is you talking to yourself without anyone interrupting. And in a world that rarely lets you be honest, that's more than a habit. That's freedom. Stillness is a forgotten language in a world that loves noise. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that language comes back to life. There are no emails dinging, no phone notifications, no traffic sounds in the background. Just silence. A silence so thick you can feel it wrapped around you. In that moment, the world isn't asking anything from you. You're not being pulled in all directions. You're not performing, proving, or producing. You're just existing, and that is enough. The lack of noise outside makes room for the truth inside to breathe. It's like someone turned the volume down on life so you could finally hear your own voice again. When you sit quietly during those early hours, something inside you starts to realign. Thoughts that were spinning out of control begin to settle like dust slowly falling to the ground. Worries lose their sharp edges. Regret stops yelling. Your mind stops rushing towards the next task, the next goal, the next distraction. It just pauses. And in that pause, you notice things you missed in the rush, how your shoulders have been tight for days, the heaviness you've been carrying in your chest, the questions you've been avoiding. Stillness doesn't make these things disappear, but it introduces you to them in a softer way. It invites you to sit with them, not to solve them right away, but to understand them. Most people are afraid of stillness because they think it means emptiness. But true stillness isn't empty. It's full. Full of presence, full of awareness, full of truth. It's where clarity comes from. Not the kind of clarity you force by overthinking, but the kind that appears when you finally stop trying so hard. It sneaks in when you least expect it, a quiet understanding, a gut feeling, a sudden realization that settles deep inside you like something you always knew but forgot. Stillness is where the fog lifts. Where answers appear not because you chased them, but because you made space for them. In the rush of the day, it's easy to confuse being busy with making progress. You check lists, answer calls, rush from one thing to the next. But movement without a clear path is just noise. And noise blocks out the inner guide that tries to help you. Stillness brings you back to that guide. It helps you ask the tough questions. Am I moving towards something important or just running from discomfort? Am I living the life I chose or one that was chosen for me? Am I just reacting or am I creating something? These questions don't always have quick answers, but stillness makes room for them to come up. This kind of stillness isn't about being lazy or avoiding things. It's the most active kind of presence. It's choosing to be fully here, fully aware, without trying to fix, perform, or escape. It's uncomfortable at first because we're so used to constant stimulation. We're addicted to distractions. But once you sit with it long enough, you start to want it. You start to trust it. And eventually, you start to see it as a source of strength. Because only when the noise stops do you hear what your life has been trying to tell you. It's in the stillness of those early hours that you realize how much wisdom you've had all along. Not from books, not from podcasts, but from your own life experiences, from your own gut feelings. You don't need someone to tell you who you are. You just need to be quiet enough to remember. You begin to notice the space between who you are and who you're becoming. Not with shame, but with curiosity. Stillness doesn't rush you to fix things. It gives you the grace to understand them. It lets the truth come forward without being chased. And when it does, it arrives gently but powerfully, like the dawn slowly breaking over a dark horizon. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., there's a very special connection between you and yourself. No filters, no roles, no expectations weighing on you. This is the hour when you meet the part of you that you rarely see during the day. The one who isn't trying to impress, perform, or just survive. It's not about proving anything. It's not about being productive or perfect. It's about presence, about showing up for your own soul when the rest of the world is too busy sleeping to notice. There's no audience here. Just you. Stripped of the noise, stripped of pretending, standing quietly in front of your own truth. This is the time when your soul is most open. The masks fall off without you even trying. The social performance turns off by itself. You're not the student, the parent, the worker, the achiever. You're just a being, a human being, not just a human doing. And in that quiet state, you realize how rare it is to actually sit with yourself like this. We spend so much of our days looking outward, responding, reacting, running. But in these early hours, everything turns inward. Your thoughts come to the surface without interruption. Your emotions knock softly instead of screaming. Your truth feels less like a burden and more like a friend. When you meet yourself in this hour, it's not always pretty. Sometimes you're exhausted. Sometimes you're worried. Sometimes you don't like what you see. But that's the point. This hour doesn't ask you to be fine. It invites you to be honest, to sit with what is, not what should be. To look yourself in the eyes and say, okay, let's talk. The darkness doesn't hide you. It reveals you. And that revealing isn't meant to shame you. It's meant to hold you. Because when the world isn't watching, you're allowed to be soft. You're allowed to be confused. You're allowed to not have it all figured out. You begin to understand that meeting yourself is the start of healing yourself. Not the kind of healing shown in movies with candles and mantras, but the tough, real kind that asks you to sit with your brokenness and not look away. In that space, you don't need advice. You don't need answers. You just need presence. A gentle understanding that you exist beyond your work, beyond your past pains, beyond your titles. You begin to realize how long you've been avoiding looking at yourself. How long you've been too busy or too scared to check in with the one person you spend your whole life with, you. This is also the hour where your gut feeling speaks the loudest. Not because it suddenly gets stronger, but because everything else gets quiet. The opinions of others, the constant flow of thoughts, the weight of past mistakes and future worries, they all fade just enough for you to hear that quiet inner voice that says, this is who you are. This is what you need. This is what you're capable of. And hearing that voice, even if it's shaky, even if it's small, changes your whole day. Because it's not just guidance, it's remembering, a coming home to yourself. What you do in this hour doesn't need to be dramatic. You don't need to meditate perfectly or write a masterpiece. Sometimes just sitting with a warm drink in silence is enough. Sometimes just placing your hand on your heart and breathing is enough. Because what matters most isn't what you do. It's that you showed up. That you made space. That you remembered your own name before the world tried to rename you.